I'm absolutely delighted to be able to welcome to the St. Leonards Kino-teatr, speaking here for the first time, the wonderful Chris Hogg.
Hello. Oh, it's working. Wonderful. I'm so pleased that everybody's mentioning their lockdown weight thing. Because the only thing I remember from lockdown, apart from the boredom, was Holly Willoughby saying you'll either be a chunk, a hunk, or a drunk. And I think I've done all three. Thank you very much. Which are you? All right. Thank you. Oh no, I've got to keep that. And this. And it's just... yeah, right. This story I'm about to tell you is a family story. And before I begin, I just want you to think about your own family. And I want you just to think for a moment about the luckiest member of your family. Who is the luckiest person in your entire family? Because this story is about the luckiest member of my family, but also at the same time, the unluckiest member of my family at exactly the same time. And so this is a kind of family epic, and it runs from 1983 to 2013. And so I hope you're going to strap straight in, because we are going back to the 80s. Let's meet the cast of this story. So, there we have it. There are three of us. There is me, Chris. I'm Chris, by the way. There is my older sister, Alexandra, and there is my younger sister, Victoria. And throughout the 80s, she had like a Dolph Lundgren spiky hairdo that didn't go down for about 3 years. She's got the hugest gap between her teeth, and she had a contraption around her head every single night for years and years and years, like a caliper, but on her head. And then there's me, and there I am again, with really, like, big bed hair. Now, this picture, I think, was taken in 1983, but I want to point out just this hole in the wall here, which was just by my bed, and I'm not sure what it was for, but it was there throughout the time that I lived in that room, and I was just convinced that whatever I put in that hole was absolutely hidden from the entire world. Nobody could see it. You can't see it, can you? No. Condoms from the Odeon cinema, from the machine, yes, stick them in there. My dad's Rothman cigarettes, yes, stick them in there. Like a sexy picture I once drew because I didn't know why I was drawing it, but I put it in there. All of it was found, and every single one, you know. But, you know, those were the olden days. Here are some other cast members from this story. We have Michael Jackson, and we have E.T. with his glowy finger. Now, strange fingers come back in this story like a poetic motif, again and again and again. But I want to tell you about this picture because it's quite interesting. So, obviously these were the two biggest stars of the mid-80s. We have Michael Jackson, who I think his album Thriller is still the best-selling album of all time. We have E.T., and in 1984, you know what, he had the biggest film of all time. It was 1983, I think, you know, with E.T. the Extraterrestrial. And here they are together, the two biggest stars of the 80s. But there's a story behind it, because Michael kind of was so famous, he didn't want to kind of have anything to do with E.T. at the beginning. But he kind of was obsessed with Peter Pan. And he knew, through the grapevine, that Steven Spielberg wanted to make a Peter Pan movie. And he reckoned that if he posed with E.T., possibility of being a bit uncool, that he knew that he might get cast in the new Peter Pan movie. So there's just like, in every picture there's a story, but this one's quite interesting. So the first time that Michael comes into my life is through a parcel that arrives one Saturday morning, and I'm 10 years old, and it's this album, and it's from my mum, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's not my birthday, and I haven't seen my mum in ages, but wow, there's this Thriller album. And so I immediately kind of put it on the stereo, and it's like, I'm just like, listen to the first one, and it's like, gotta be starring something, gotta be starring something, I'm a vegetable. He's a vegetable, why does he say he's a vegetable? But he does, he just keeps saying that. It's a very interesting moment. But I used to love the stereo that was by the side of my room, and there was a little red light, and I used to stare at it the whole time, just kind of was climbing inside. The next one's a ballad, and that was a little bit boring, but my sister liked that one. But anyway, so he arrived in my life, and kind of reminded me that I hadn't seen my mum in a long time, because my parents had got divorced, and they'd got divorced I think when I was about 3.5. And so my dad, who was immensely wealthy, won custody. My mother had committed a crime in being French and it being also the 70s. And so she didn't stand a chance, really, in that kind of legal system. So, there is me, my dad, and Victoria, and also a watch. You might just see that watch. It's interesting, he's kind of hiding his hand because he has also got something wrong with his hand. Well, not wrong, but his hand is not a normal hand. But he kind of adorns it with this watch, which is a Baume & Mercier watch that was so filigree. It was like one molecule of gold and one molecule of air, and I swear it must have cost the hugest amount of money. Now, where did he get all this money from? Back in the early 70s, he was a tyre fitter. And he was a tyre fitter at a time when they were just legalising casinos first time in the United Kingdom. And so he turned up at a casino in probably, I think, 1970, maybe 71, 72, with his weekly wages. And he went up. You can imagine what the casino would have been like. It would have been glamorous. There would have been chandeliers. There would have been tinkling glasses. There would have been hat check girls. There would have been all kinds of glamour and strange characters. And so he goes in with his wages and he puts his numbers down. He puts down 8, 11, 33, 36, 26, whatever. I mean, he has his numbers. He likes it, you know. And what happens is that the number 0 comes up. One of his numbers. Wow, brilliant. But what croupiers do when you have a winning number is they sometimes leave your stake in place. So not only does he get 36 times his, the stake, but they just leave it there. And so what happens then? The wheel spins for a second time. What happens? 0 comes up again. Wow, twice. Amazing. Amazing. That's great luck. Then, so the wheel spins again. The same stake is just left there. And the 0 comes up for the 3rd time in the trot. Wow. There's probably a little crowd kind of forming here, because it's quite rare for 3 numbers to come up on the trot. The wheel goes again. 0 comes up for the 4th time on the trot. Now, I've spoken to croupiers, and they say that, you can, after years of practice, get a ball into a quarter of a roulette wheel. But only if you've been there for 10 years. So what are we up to? We're up to 3? Yeah. 4. Spins again. 0 comes up for the again. Puts the money on again. 0 comes up for the 6th time. The odds are something like 2.5 billion to 1. And if you speak to a croupier, they will say that 6 has happened maybe 8 or 9 times in the 20th century. But 7 has never happened. Not one croupier has ever spoken about 7 numbers coming up consecutively on the trot, which I think is kind of quite an interesting fact. So, he walks out of that casino in the early 70s with about £14,500. He'd walked in a tyre fitter. 15 minutes later, he doesn't know what to do with his money, but he does. He's clever. He goes to his boss the next day at the tyre company and says, "Can I invest in the company?" By that afternoon, he's a director. He's the youngest company director at the age, I think he was 22 at the time, which was an astounding feat. He goes and buys his house. He lives in Richmond, or grew up in Richmond. He's now got a house in Richmond, and he's a director of a company. It's just luck beyond luck. He wasn't always lucky, because when he was born, which was in 1946, he was born with a hand that had been fused together. It's called syndactyly, and I don't know if you've come across it before, but I think it's quite beautiful in its way. But my grandmother, his mother, was always really, she just felt guilty because of the fact that he'd been born with an impairment, but he didn't really bother him too much, but that's what he was born with. But interesting, when he was born, she wanted to solve that problem for him, and the only place that you could probably get any plastic surgery in the United Kingdom at that point was in East Grinstead, in a clinic run by, I think, Ralph Mackindoe. And Ralph Mackindoe had made his name in the Second World War by unfusing the hands of World War II pilots that had been burnt as they crashed. And so he started something called the Guinea Pig Club. And the Guinea Pig Club was a club that he'd done by walking around every pub in East Grinstead, almost house to house, and says, "Listen, we've got heroes in the town, but they are monsters because I'm developing new forms of treatment." And the next slide is a little bit gruesome. There's no blood or guts, but you're going to see some World War II airmen you're never going to have seen a picture like it, or maybe you have. Ready? There. So he creates tubes of living skin that go from under the arm right up to their nose, and then uses the skin to rebuild all the features. But in the First World War, they would have had tin faces. But in the Second World War, they had absolutely, they developed. He was a New Zealander and a very, very interesting man. And he's still honoured in the town now if you ever go there. My dad obviously got sent to the Mackindow Institute, whatever it was called, I can't remember. But at that era, they didn't let parents and kids stay together. So he arrived, I think, at the age of 4 years old, kind of just a normal kid, but didn't leave for another 6 weeks, in which case he hardly saw his mum or his dad, and he just regressed. He became, he became incontinent, he couldn't control his bladder, he was kind of desperate, so there was a kind of just a really early trauma that happened in his life. And it happened just through just the sheer bad luck of the era, the time. Everybody has a story like that. Everybody has a member of the family who has bad luck as well. Let's pause that story for a second. So, I was born in 1973, and at this point, he was immensely rich, my dad. His company had done well, and I went to school in a Rolls Royce, and yeah, that was odd in and of itself. And we also used to go on holidays quite a lot. We went on loads of holidays. It was just like one, party after another. And Britain is changing. Britain's becoming much more hedonistic, and you can fly to America, and you can fly to Spain. But all of these things were just happening for the first time. And on the flight back from going to Disney World, I go into a shop and I see this album, and I'm obsessed with stories and like cassette tapes and stuff. And this one is, I know this is a record, I couldn't find a picture of the cassette, but this is an album that Michael Jackson wrote. So at the same time that Thriller was in the charts, he adapted the E.T. story and he recorded it, and there's actually like a track that could well have been on the Thriller album, but that is just put on this one instead. And so there's a secret track that I really recommend you kind of track down. But what's interesting is that Michael's relationship with E.T. has changed. He's kind of like, by writing the story, he's kind of getting really into it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to play you a little bit. I'm going to play you a bit from his adaptation of E.T. Let's see if it works. It's very quiet, so get your listening heads on.
Out of the night sky, a ship was descending, the hull glowing with soft light, as if a piece of the moon had fallen. The hatch opened and the crew came out. Odd little beings, moving quietly through the leaves, gathering. A blackberry bush, a rose, a tiny cedar tree.
He then gets really into the story. Hang on 1 second. Do I have to press it again? I think so.
But E.T. was going where no one could follow. His starfire was out, and he was as cold as the moon.
Creature's pressure is bottoming out. His complexes are slow and widening.
All right, I'm calling. What time?
E.T. was gone.
He's in tears telling the story. I just think it's just really, he's just completely attached to this character now, as we all were at that,
So they placed E.T. in a coffin of ice, but left Elliot alone with him, because Elliot was the one he'd come to across the great ocean of time.
So I want us to fast forward from 1983 to 2013, and Michael Jackson makes another entry into my life in the most unexpected way. So in that time, 1983 to 2013, my dad his luck has really started to run out. So if you drink a bottle of Teachers a day and smoke 40 Rothmans, that's not going to agree with you after about 40, after 30 years. It really isn't. And so he started to become quite well, and his voice is changing a little bit. And so my sister and I, those people in the first picture, are going, your voice is changing. But he just doesn't take any notice of us. He doesn't take any notice of us because he's involved in a really strange story. Oh, also, he's gone from being driving around in a Rolls Royce to being a security guard at a school in Bournemouth. And he loves the school, and I'm absolutely proud of him, he just worked through everything that he ever did. He wasn't allowed to see his daughter either. He wasn't allowed to see his daughter, the littlest one in that picture, Victoria, because of some incident in a McDonald's in Poole. And I don't know the murky details, but, a coffee cup was thrown and suddenly he no longer sees his daughter. But he's living at this point in a bedsit in Bournemouth, and he's formed a platonic relationship with a girl called Louise who lives on the bedsit below him. And I think they have a platonic relationship, and they play Scrabble, and they drink Baileys, and, they just live their lives as you do. It's during one of these conversations that Louise notices that there is a pile of envelopes addressed to the Michael Jackson fan club. And so I think that it takes a while for the penny to drop, but then they suddenly think, why do they keep coming here? What if this building was actually the headquarters of the Michael Jackson fan club? And so they think, well, the loft is sealed up with polyfill around the edges. I mean, doesn't that mean something? And so, like two archaeologists, they grab a stepladder and they climb up and they remove the polyfiller and they open it up and they see that it is full of amazing things. That's not really what they found up there, but that is a 3,000-year-old relic found in a tomb in Egypt of a servant girl. And it does have just the most uncanny resemblance to Michael Jackson that you've ever seen. But they did find loads and loads of things. They found necklaces, they found armbands, they found just stuff from the fan club from I think the His Story tour, which was about 1995. I've even brought a little bit here today. This is a mask that you could get. I know it looked like panties from my top pocket, but no, it's just actually one of the Michael Jackson masks, because he was ahead of his time, obviously, in very many ways, So what do? They're down on their luck. They begin to sell it piece by piece. And I put in some, this is how I kind of imagined it using AI to see what Michael Jackson's kind of Egyptian tomb might look like, just full of gold and things and just kind of weirdnesses. So they then proceed to sell as much of it as they possibly can. It's all going to Japan, and they're earning, a few £100 every single week, just fencing it on eBay bit by bit by bit. That's actually, if you go to eBay today, you can still see that the memorabilia is still, for $113,000, you can have his diamond-encrusted glove. But this got me thinking. When I found out about this, I found out that, in fact, there were two Michael Jackson fan clubs, because I wanted to find out more. I've got a few bits of memorabilia left. I wanted to give it back to him, after my father had died. I was like, let's get it all back to him. So let me tell you about these two. So the one that my dad found was the Michael Jackson New International fan club. But there was a thing called the Michael Jackson World Network. And the Michael Jackson World Network is fascinating because of this guy, Adrian Grant. And when Thriller comes out in 1983, Adrian Grant is 13 years old. You can see him gripping it on the bus from the HMV shop on Oxford Street. It is the most exciting moment of his life. So exciting, he starts a zine, a printed zine with a photocopier from his mum's work. And, he just starts hiding it, Banksy style, in HMV until they see it and people want to buy it. And so HMV, they see him and they say, look, all right, why don't you actually do this officially? Why don't you just kind of start printing more copies and putting them in HMV? And so that's exactly what Adrian Grant does. And he makes a little bit of money, It's like he's probably 18 or 19 by now, but he's got a few £1,000 in the bank. He doesn't know what to spend it on, but then he does. He has this most brilliant idea. He decides to commission a painting of Michael Jackson, and he commissions this painting. It costs him £2,000, and he then rings up the Michael Jackson management in the US and says, this zine in London would like to really honour Michael with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And so they love it in America. And they say, yeah, come along. And we've painted this picture. Yeah, bring the picture. And so Adrian Grant takes this portrait all the way to America, and he gets to become friends with his absolute hero, Michael Jackson. amazing entrepreneurship, I personally think. That's the kind of stuff that my dad was finding. Not quite on the same caliber at all, but, you know, I still like it. Adrian Grant got so close to Michael Jackson that when Adrian Grant had the idea that he wanted to write a musical about Thriller, he was given full permission. So Adrian Grant went from being a 13-year-old on a bus to being one of the most successful black entrepreneurs in the country just by getting as close as he can to his hero. It's a really, from an entrepreneurial family, I love that. So there we go. So I'm going to finish off the story in the last couple of minutes. But what I want to say is that what happened is that they sold all the gear, they got used to the money, and then Louise Brown started telling my dad that she needed to have some money in order to get some tests because she was in line to get a big inheritance. If only she could just prove to the executors that she wasn't on drugs. And so over the last 6 months of my father's life, he took out 7 credit cards for about £7,000 each. So he did one final bank job before on his way out. So, you know, going from the worst luck to the best luck to the worst luck to the best luck. I think the best luck was that he didn't have to face the music of doing one final bank job. And so he died in 19th of May 2013. And he is presently in a tube underneath my sister's desk. We still can't quite decide what to do with our dad. But you know what? Every time I look at this picture, I think, you know what? You didn't get up every day deciding that you wanted to drink a bottle of whiskey or smoke 40 fags. It's just the way it happened. And so on this night, we say thank you very much. And I think that's pretty much the end of my story. Thank you.
Chris Hogg.